What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of That's My Time. I'm your host, Greg Aidala. I'm very excited about today's guest. We'll get to her in a moment. I think you're going to find her very entertaining, very knowledgeable, very interesting, very motivated, lighthearted, but yet serious in what she believes in, which we'll get into. And I've been a fan of hers for a while, and I just met her recently, and I'm really excited to have her here. Before we get into that, let me just, as always, thank our sponsors that make this show possible for us to continue. First off, QUAIL Auto Sales. That's my family's automobile business located in Albany, New York. We're very fortunate and blessed to be celebrating 81 years this year. Also, NOVUS Custom Sportswear. I'm at headquarters right now at NOVUS in Albany, New York. They're my good friends, Nick and Garrett Bernardo, and the whole team. They've been very supportive of my career ever since I met them many years ago, and we do a lot of work together, so I'm always thankful for them. Also, Swag Island Tees. That's my buddy Ed Stevens. Ed does a lot of design work as well, a little bit different from NOVUS. So look into Swag Island Tees and what they might be offering you as well. All those links can be found below. Also, Coach Me Greg. Those are my life coaching and executive coaching services. I'd be happy to sit down, help you find the right path that you need to be on in life. It's what I like to do. And I like to see people become the best version of themselves. And lastly, and certainly not least, is Next Evolution Media. That's my friend Bobby Chase, who puts all these great videos together for me here. And I'm very thankful for all the work that he's done with me, and together we've done for over 10 years. That all said, let's get right into it. I'm very excited to welcome today's guest, who's a very talented actress and comedian. You may know her from her great days at Saturday Night Live, perhaps her performance in Forrest Gump, Men in Black, and Seinfeld, just to name a few. I'm very excited to welcome to the program Siobhan Fallon Hogan. Siobhan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Greg. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on in and join me for the show. So, we met a few weeks ago at a
Yes.
great this is October. We're doing this, so whenever people are seeing it, and it's Cancer Awareness Month, and you met Nick and Garrett Bernardo of
Great
NOVUS
guy.
earlier this year out in California. Great guys, right? They're great guys, great family, and you guys hit it off, and you came into their party to kick off Cancer Awareness Month earlier this month, and I had just a pleasant time talking with you, and give me what I'm curious is what is what is your connection with cancer? Because I know that everyone here is like preface it like my mother passed away of breast cancer in 1981. So
Yeah.
I've been looking at this and very very attuned to it and want to see it eradicated soon. Do you have any particular personal stories that you're willing to share about cancer or breast cancer in particular?
Well, my dad died of lymphoma. Luckily, I mean, as far as cancer goes, he was 79. So, and it was just the last year of his life, but it was a terrible struggle. And my husband's mother, my husband Peter's one of seven, she died at 52. So I never met her.
Mhm.
Um, and then my best friend from home had breast cancer early on in her 40s, and her sister passed away
Mhm.
early from breast cancer. So, when Nick and Garrett asked me to do the benefit at NOVUS, I was more than happy to, come and help out.
Yeah. No, it's great. And I know everyone's appreciative for that. And thanks for sharing that. And what's neat is so we're both upstate New York people, right?
Yeah.
And I'm from the Albany area and you're from Syracuse. What do you and you're familiar with the capital region, which is great. What did you find? I'm always curious about other upstaters. In the 315, what was your experience growing up in central New York? Good experience?
Honestly, I always say, first of all, I lived in Syracuse till second grade, and then I moved to Casanova.
Casanova. Yeah.
So
Okay.
those people that most people know from upstate, but it's a little small lake town. But I
Mhm.
think it was an idyllic upbringing. Honestly, I loved it so much. I love the definite four seasons. We were really outdoors all the time. I mean, that's one thing with kids these days. I have three kids of my own who are now in their 20s, but you don't see a lot of kids out in the streets. I mean, we were literally out. Oh, like as soon as you came to the door, my mother was like, "Get back out." And
Mhm.
we skied and we went sledding, and in the summer we were always swimming. And I actually like this time of year was my favorite. I love the fall. I was like a cheerleader for I wasn't very good actually, but I was one. For my football team, in Casanova.
Mhm.
And I just feel that the upstate people have a great attitude. And my mom actually was originally from Chicago, like just as a little girl, then came to Syracuse. But I feel like it's definitely got that Midwestern feel, and the people are really happy and friendly, and I don't know, and smart. There's so many good schools. Like I'm at Novus the other night when we did the benefit. There was kids there from Siena. My
Yeah.
cousin's son actually goes there.
Hmm.
So I really love upstate so much. I
Yeah.
actually have a house in Casanova that we go to in the summer still, and I try to spend there as much time as possible.
Yeah, I read that. I think that's really neat, and I imagine that your family and friends in the town in general just love having you go back, and I think that's a big part of life is not forgetting your roots and where you're from,
Oh yeah,
and I think
definitely.
yeah, and I think that's really delightful to hear, and I concur with you in regards to upstate and being small people. I love the smart people. I love the Four Seasons and everything of that nature, and from there, you go on to Lemoyne College. Um, and well, first of all, you mentioned Siena. My dad's a Siena grad too, class of 1960. And
Oh,
I know, yeah, it's great. It's a small world. And I'm actually taking which we'll get into because we're both Catholic. I'm actually taking a class there this fall. It's
really?
yeah, it's Catholic bioethics and stuff that
That's awesome. I mean, it's
yeah.
such a great school, and
Mm.
I know friends over the. It seems like anyone who ever goes to that school loves it.
Yeah, and it's really great. It's one of the state in the country too. It has such a great rate of taking graduates and getting right into the
Oh
workforce. And
yeah,
yeah,
that's
and
great.
it's a good asset um, for any student and especially the region. But you go to Lemoyne, so you're a Dolphin. I had a niece that went
Yes.
there as well, and I'd been out there to visit friends there once back when we were in college. Um, when you were growing up, and I love how you mentioned because I'm the same way, right? I'm one of 8 kids, and we grew up in that era of we're never inside, we're always playing. We knew when it was dinner time when the street lights came on. So
Exactly.
6 o'clock, you better be home for supper and all that nature. When you were growing up, I believe you touched on this in the talk here when you were in Albany a few weeks ago. What was so I'll preface it this way. Like, so when our mother died, our father really kept us close with teamwork, love, and humor. And we were very, as you're going through this and trying to figure out the gravity of it, we were always very blessed and privileged to always try to make each other laugh. And that was the genesis of, how I
Wait,
got
how
into,
how old were you when your mom died?
I was 7.
Oh my gosh. And she died of cancer?
Yeah, breast cancer. Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah.
how was the oldest sibling?
17.
Oh my gosh, that's
So
terrible.
yeah, it went 17 to my younger brother, who was 5, and both my parents were the same age at 43. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, your dad's a
Yes.
hero.
My dad is, yeah, he's an amazing, I don't use that word often, but he really is an amazing man. He's a
Yeah.
truly beautiful man that would bless to, and he's 85. He's still with us. He goes into work every day. So,
Yeah.
very blessed. And for that, like his mother, both my grandparents on both sides were very witty, supportive of what we wanted to do. Let us play, work
Yes.
hard, play hard. Did you have that experience growing up in your family, and then that leads you
Oh,
into college? Yeah.
100%. So,
Yeah.
okay. My father was one of 11
Mhm.
and a big Irish Catholic family. My mom was one of 3. She was Irish as well. And they used to say it was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde wedding because my mother was kind of sophisticated and my father's family was like, I mean, he had 3 brothers who went on to be oral surgeons and he became a lawyer, but it was like the Fallons were like, hilarious Irish that were out and about. And
Mhm.
anyway, I was not academic in any way, or I had undiagnosed something, but I don't know what it was. But I couldn't really pay attention in school. But no one really diagnosed people in those days. I was like, huh. But anyway, my I remember going when I went to Lemoyne. Um, I got a D in astronomy. So you had to take a science. I was like, okay, what is the least science class that I could take. So I was like, astronomy. Cut to it's like really hard. They're like, I think I got to like the Doppler effect, which I didn't even understand. Anyways, like they were like, oh, the sound goes by, it gets louder when it gets to you. And they were like, why? And I was like, I don't know. But anyway, so I remember my father saying when I got home, he's like, Dad, I got a D in astronomy. He's like, Siobhan, see that pie? He's like, look at that pie. 65% of it's left. That's a lot of pie that's left. You know, a lot. A D is 65%. So my mother was very academic and really smart and well-read. My mother say, you're like your father, you're a people person. So anyway, my family really stressed storytelling and humor. So I almost feel like that was valued more than getting an A. So I remember my sister Megan, who's the youngest, would sit. She sat at the table closer down to my father. I sat closer to my mother, and she'd have to get up out of her chair and she'd go down and she'd say to my mother, when can I talk? Because everyone was always talking, telling stories. So anyway, I went to Lemoyne to, oh gosh, I didn't know what it was going to be. I think I had like several different majors. I remember I originally majored in economics because I thought that'd be cool to be like at a party and be like, what's your major? I was like, economics. I thought that sounded good. That was another one. I could only get to the supply and demand chart. And then I was like, huh? But anyway, I ended up majoring in English. But my senior year, I was supposed to student teach. And then I was like, wait a minute, I really want to be an actress. And my Aunt Beth, who was a journalist from New York City, she was an only child, and we called her aunt. She was really my father's first cousin. She used to come up. She wrote for the Daily News for years. She had Page 3, and she was the first female City Hall bureau chief. She covered Kennedy, which is going to come full to a story later. I'm not just saying that to brag about my aunt.
Sure.
So anyway, my father's like, all right, well, you want to be an actress. You've been in all these plays at Lemoyne. Let's have you talk to Beth. And she was Jackie Gleason's daughter, Linda Miller, and Jason Miller was her husband, his best friend. So I talked to Linda Miller, who's Jason Patrick's mother, who I did the TV show Wayward Pines with, crazy, maybe 8 years ago. And she said, you should go to Catholic U. So I went to Catholic University to get my master's in fine arts and acting, which my father would say is a very expensive way of learning to pretend that you're someone else. So that's what I did. I went to Catholic U. It was awesome. I got training, and then I moved to New York City, and I quickly skyrocketed and became a receptionist at a law firm.
Okay.
And but then I auditioned and everything, and then basically, and I tell young people this, like, I feel that rejection is one of the greatest gifts. Because, I would go to auditions and everything, and people say, oh, don't worry, you're going to grow into your look when you're in your 40s. And, you're in your 20s. You're like, are you kidding me? So I was doing improv at this club, making $10 a night on Saturday nights. It was called Who's on First on 65th and First. And anyway, this guy suggested that I do a one-person show. And so I had no idea how to do it, but I wrote a one-person show, and I basically wrote all the parts I would love to play if someone would possibly cast me, which they wouldn't. So I was like a Midwestern stand-up comic. I was a kid. I was a cheerleader, and from that show, it got good reviews, and so a lot of my friends were starting to move out to LA. There was a lot of work out in LA then. Not so much now. It's more spread out. You can basically go on location and film a movie anywhere. But I did the play out there, the one-person show, and Seinfeld came, and SNL came, and that's how I got those jobs.
Oh, okay. So was that the Groundlings? Were you doing stuff at the Groundlings or not?
Okay, so the Groundlings actually came to New York when I was there as the receptionist.
Okay.
And they had class, and I did shows with them, showcases, but it never worked in New York. They were only there for 2 years, and then they were back in LA. It was always LA that it did very well. I actually after I went to graduate school, I actually went to Chicago for 3 weeks because my professor at Lemoyne was like, you should do improv in Chicago. And I was like, okay. So that's where Saturday Night Live got most people from.
City, yeah.
Yeah. And so many of my friends, Chris Farley, so many people came out of Second City. But I was too lonely. I missed all my friends in New York. I only lasted in Chicago for 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. That's okay. That's good. Look, you improv'd out there for 3 weeks, and you're like,
exactly.
Look, I can't fake it anymore.
Oh, I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah, right. And I'm glad you mentioned Second City, because I have been out there to watch shows, and they're phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
The people on those casts, what they put into it, are fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
so fast, and you can see why, SNL and various shows will visit, places like Second City, the Groundlings, and find this young talent and nurture them. So that's great. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut off.
No.
So you now you come back to New York. So you come back to New York, and is this where did you continue improv in the city? And if so, which route did you take?
Yes. So what happened was I go back to the city. I tried to be a waitress, but I was terrible at it. So my mother's like, you can answer phones. So that's when I became the receptionist at the law firm. Still really good friends with a few of those lawyers today. And I was literally depressed reading. There used to be a paper called Backstage. Now I believe it's online.
Sure, it is
And that's
online.
where
Yep.
young actors who didn't have
Mhm,
agents would thumb through and, go to auditions and that kind of thing.
mhm.
I actually got my equity card from that. I auditioned on a sub-zero freezing day where there was warning, stay inside, do not go out, it's too cold. And I was like, I'm from Syracuse. And there was an
Yeah.
audition for a children's theater. It was the floating hospital on a boat. And I got my equity card playing a bear. And so I would sing about the four basic food groups in a bear costume to children, like there was government programming. That's how I got my equity card. Okay, so then I was like, I got to get out of here. This is awful. And my father was like, not the bear job, the receptionist job. And I was like,
Yeah.
not making any money. I was like, poor as a church mouse. And my father's like, look, why don't you come home to Syracuse and open a dinner theater? And I was like, and be a lawyer. And I was like, oh, okay, forget that. So I had this paper, and there was a girl. I would get all my actor friends jobs at this law firm. There was a girl that I was like, she's kind of annoying. I don't really want to help. I don't want her to work here, but I'm Catholic. You got to do the right thing. So be kind. So I recommend her. And I always say what goes around comes around, because what happened was she said, Siobhan, there's an audition for an improv group. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have auditioned for this improv group that was at 65th and First. And it was called Who's on First. And that's when I got in the improv group and would do that on Saturday nights. And then that's when the director suggested I write the one person show. So yeah, I always tell the young people, you work hard at these jobs, you think are going to mean nothing, but it's all part of the journey.
Exactly. It is part of the journey. You never know who you're going to meet, connect with. They see your talents, and sometimes when you don't, you're like, as you mentioned, like I'm poor as a church mouse. I don't know where to go. What to do. And yet, there's always someone that's watching, saying, "Oh, you know what? That person." And I think that's the greater teamwork of the world. Like,
Yeah. And
just
honestly, if I had gotten cast in plays and gotten cast early on, I would never have written. And it was the writing
right.
of my own one person shows that helped me get on SNL and Seinfeld. And
Yeah.
then truly
Excuse me.
throughout the years, as I mentioned, I have three kids, which I was going to say about that, what I was telling you about my aunt being the city hall bureau chief.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
my daughter Bernadette, my oldest, then became a journalist, and she was the city hall bureau chief. So of
Uh,
and she started in Albany, because Albany, she went to Marist, she went to
okay.
Albany, ended up working for the New York Post,
Mhm.
went down to New York, and when she went to City Hall, there on the wall was a picture of my aunt and my uncle, who was another journalist. So it's crazy.
It is crazy. And to follow up, you had said, was the story something about with your aunt with Kennedy? You had a follow up story with that?
Oh yes, just
Is
that so my aunt was the first city hall bureau chief, and John F. Kennedy. She met everybody. This was back in the 60s, and so 50s, 60s, and then my daughter ends up going down doing the exact same job as as a female, which was unusual, and she now covers Hochul and Adams, and
Oh, okay.
that's her main beat. Yes,
Oh boy, so she stays busy.
yeah, it's crazy.
It's one from one day to the other. It's all
Yeah,
over.
it's like it's so interesting. It's like, honestly, it's like the old fashioned soap operas. I'm like, Bernadette, what's going on now? And she's like, I don't want to talk about it, Mom.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
it's my job.
It's like what's going to happen to Luke and Laura today?
Yes.
That's a General Hospital reference. The reason I
Yeah.
know that is because my sisters were big into that.
Oh, please.
And
I'm not proud of it, but I did schedule my college classes around Luke and Laura.
oh, okay, there you
Mhm.
go. Well, that makes you know what? That makes everyone happy and proud because of the way you turned out. So I think it's very great. So this is great. So here's the things like I wanted to know about you. And I do think, if youngsters are listening out there that, and I try to espouse this and empower young people getting entertainment, like not be starry-eyed. I, I am not like I grew up in a family business. I played three instruments. I still play. I did that through high school. I emceed events in high school. Um, and um, because people, it was like the right time, right place, right time. And um, but it was the humor that got us through like the storm when our mother died. And I'm very thankful for the gift of
Yes.
humor and everything of that nature. And I do try to, like I said, encourage people to write your obviously your own material. But I think that you hit the nail on the head, and you said not that you were so much forced, but you had to write this one person play, and it gives you this perspective. It's like being in front of the camera and behind the camera, and that's a really, really important balance that people um, need to understand in this business. Is you have to have these sensibilities so you can understand and relate to people in front of the camera and behind the camera. It makes you more well-rounded, and also it gives you a depth to where we can pick up a cell phone, and you mentioned this before. You can film anywhere around the world can get their message out there. But some of this stuff, and I've had this discussion with some of my friends, and they're very successful comedians and getting the household names, that some of us wouldn't want to, we've been in it over 20 years, entertainment, wouldn't want to start all over again in some respect, because you get people that go on YouTube and all of a sudden they're this sensation, and then clubs are hiring them to do an hour, but they got 3 or 4 minutes of material.
Yeah.
So it kind of like sets things back a little bit, and the cream always rises to the top. But I want to know more about if you feel that way now, when you started and writing and doing these things, and what you've seen a possible shift within the business, especially towards writing.
Yeah. First of all, there's been a massive shift in the business, and I I think it's rough for young people. However, I think exactly what I thought 30 years ago when I started writing my own material is the more you can take control and not be waiting around for someone else to have control of your destiny, the better. And you have to be trained. Like as an actress, my daughter Sinead is pursuing acting, and so is my son. But so she goes to class and those kind of things. And I said, people rarely teach diction now. I mean, when they're studying a script, if you really want to be the creme de la creme, as you say, the cream rises, you have to study it all. You can't just be a fly by night TikTok sensation, but I do think that the material was fabulous years ago. I mean, the movies were great. The TV, I mean, there was 3 TV stations. And then when Fox came in, that was like, oh, there's 4 TV stations. Now, I have a big problem in that so much of the material is filth.
Yeah.
And anybody can write something filthy. It's simple. It's just easy. You don't have to be smart. And it's just not okay. I mean, people need to take responsibility, I feel, and realize that there's young people out there looking up to names, looking up to certain shows that have a lot of publicity, and the material's just raunch and rank.
It is. Yeah.
But anyway, on a bright note, you can rise above that and write your own material. And I have done that forever. So when the going was rough, when I was in my 20s, I wrote a one-person show. Then I had my 3 kids. And I was like, oh, a little out of the loop, write another show. So then I wrote another one like maybe 10 years ago. And honestly, when my youngest daughter, so my kids are 29, 26, 22, was going to college. So like, what is that? 6 years ago, she was a junior. And I was like, uh-oh. So what am I going to do? Because I'm not domestic. I gotta, I worked, maybe half the year on a good year. And, I should write a movie because I don't want to write another one-person show. I just didn't feel like it. And, they're fun and everything, but, you go out afterwards and you're like, well, remember that scene? No, because it was just me. And, it's not as fun as being with, or as relaxing, I should say, not fun, as being in a cast of a play or, a big cast. It's a lot of pressure just on your own. So I thought, let me give us a shot at writing a film. I've been in enough movies. I really didn't know how to go about it, but I got final draft the program, and my son was in college at the time at West Virginia University, and all these horrible stories were going around about fraternity hazing. And I thought, well, this is close to me, and I am in the fetal position every night, worried about my son. So I'm going to write a story, try to write a movie about that. So I started writing, and I had done 3 films with Lars von Trier, who's a Danish director, and I had done these films with him. And was this I'm trying to think? I did one called The House that Jack Built, about Jack the Ripper, with Matt Dillon.
Yeah.
And I just finished that. And so I started writing this and rushed, and I sent it to Lars, and I sent it to Robert Patrick, who's a good friend of mine, actor. Most people know him from Terminator, and he's been in so many movies. But anyway, so simultaneously, they were both like, "Oh, we love the script." And I was like, "You do? Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it." So then I started to raise money, and I started to go on Facebook and say, "Hey, I'm going to shoot this movie in my town in New Jersey, and who wants to give houses?" And called in favors like Perry Gilpin from Frasier's a friend. She was in it. And my son was in it, and Jake Weary from Animal Kingdom. Anyway, so the moral of the story is, at every level, at every age along the way, writing for myself has been the key.
Yeah.
Without having to wait. And, it's honestly, it's just like dating. It's like, as soon as you do that, then the phone rings and they're like, oh, like I ended up getting a call just as I finished my second movie, Shelter and Solitude, that I wrote, that's out, just came out last year, and AMC and Regal ended up picking it up. It's on Amazon now, but I got a call to be in this movie with Eileen Hathaway. I honestly wasn't even thinking about it. I was like, I got to finish this movie. I got to edit this movie. So it's kind of like when you're least expect it, when you're working hard, things kind of come together.
That's right. Yeah, it is. I like the analogy about dating. You're like, I can't find it. All of a sudden, like the phone, sometimes, not in my
Yeah.
case, but like rings off the hook.
No,
Like,
it's like when you were like, I don't feel like, well, I'm done with that. And
yes,
then you're more attractive in a way.
right. Yeah, it's so crazy. But I really, really like your work ethic. And I find that you know, within my experience within the industry, the more people, because I like to surround myself with smarter people, better writers. My friends are such great writers that inspire me, be it authors or in the entertainment, movie, or stand-up world. And I think that when because that something that you said, and I try to be benevolent and give back to youngsters starting out. It's the same message that I received when I started hosting shows. I was doing 5, 6 shows a week, and these road comics would say, "Greg, you're a great host. You should, and you're organized." And that was from my family business, just growing up around it, being organized. And they said, "You should host and produce shows."
Oh,
And that it's to your point of, go on your strengths. I've never been in this business to be about myself. That's why with my traveling showcase, the Brouhaha, I have 2 headliner friends. I love setting up the room, reading, and then I pass it off. And I think that comes into play with a lot, that what you said and how you were raised and how you feel moving forward, that you're very open, you're to new projects, new ideas, ever growing. That's super important in life. You're benevolent with your time, your advice. And I think it's a really attractive quality to have, especially in a business that's super fickle, because anyone who gets into entertainment does it for the same reason. They get it for the financial security. I mean, right?
oh gosh. Yeah.
I,
Uh-huh.
come on. I mean, that's why everyone does. But we're talking about journeys here, and your writing. I just want to get back to something. When you were doing improv out in LA, and you had mentioned that Seinfeld showed up,
Yeah.
and I was very fortunate enough to be on a show with him at Gotham, just a handful of years ago. And NBC was he was making his comeback, and Brian Williams was there, and I'll never forget. It was a Wednesday show at Gotham. They're like, "Hey, we're sold out." No one knew he was coming. I got a call on Monday from NBC. It said, "Are you okay if we film your set?" And I'm like, "Who am I to say no?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And So I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. I got to the club, and one of my friends was hosting. It said, look, you're going on last. I'm like, or actually, it was second to last. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Um, and they said Seinfeld's going to follow you. And I said, so do you really want me to do my B material? Because I want to help this Seinfeld guy out. Is he gonna do all
That's
right
so
here?
funny. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was, and I'd never, the reason I bring that up is because um no one, it was unannounced. So, and he was working on a set that he wound up doing like on he was doing on Tonight Show. I think it was the next week. And boy, oh boy, New York City crowds, and it was 200 people there at Gotham. And I'll never get, my friend set it up perfectly and said, hey, you never know who's going to pop in here. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jerry Seinfeld. And the place went nuts like it was a
Oh, it's great.
Metallica show. It was fantastic.
He's such a
Um,
good guy.
yeah, he was very kind. My question to you is well, I guess it's twofold. How did it come about? Like, I know he saw you. How did it go from there, the discussions, to you getting 3 episodes on a great,
Oh yeah.
a great character that just everything you do, I could, saw your improv skills, everything just, I have a thermos here. I cannot with a straw not take a
No,
sip
well,
and
wait.
just do your
Okay.
impression.
So this is what happened. He didn't see my one person show. There was a
Oh,
play called Saturday Night Live saw the one person show. There was a play called
okay.
American Splendor about Harvey Picar, who people that are into underground comics. He was an underground comic from Ohio. They ended up making a movie about it. Anyway, it was Dan Castellaneta, Homer Simpson was in it, me,
Oh,
and my friend Vince directed, whatever. So they came to it, and I auditioned and to play Elaine's roommate, based on a friend of mine from Casanova, because I had this friend, and she was always, the guys always really liked her. And she talked really in your face. And she was like, what? And they loved her. So I basically just did that character. And Jerry was so funny because when we would do the rehearse, he wouldn't look at me. He'd like look to my shoulder. I was like, what are you looking at? He's like, I can't look at you because if I look at you, I'm going to laugh. But anyway, he's so funny. And the first episode that I did, they were wondering if they were going to get picked up. They didn't even know if they're going to get picked up for the next season because it was such a new concept. It was so great. And and Larry David called me. I'll never forget, in my apartment in LA. I lived in LA for all of 2 years.
mhm.
Did not fit in there at all. But anyway,
Yeah.
and he said, Siobhan, and I thought he was going to say, he said, I'm so sorry. I thought he was going to say my part was cut. And he's like,
Yeah.
we're going to trim your part a little. And I was like, oh, that's fine. I don't care. He's like, because we have to fit this into 22 minutes and, it's, we got to get it down. So I remember getting there and I was like, okay, I'm going to need it. That really those water things that kids walk around with now, they weren't really that popular then. And I was like, could I get a big glass with a straw? Because I'm coming from, so I like literally milked it. I was like, I did this improv class. And it was like, you might have taken my lines away, but I will sip this straw longer than you've ever seen and basically use that to my advantage. But and then they would call me sporadically to do the other episodes, but then I got SNL, which was unbelievable. And I was supposed to do one that they wouldn't let me out of SNL to do. They wouldn't so I was supposed to do another one that was about the Mike Tyson fight.
Mhm.
And another one, the one I did with Kramer, the African dancing.
It's so great. The glass
And
table.
he was really, they worked very hard on that show. It wasn't like they just
Mm.
were like, were winging it and were, just going on their charm and good looks and their natural comedic ability.
Mm.
They really worked hard and would rehearse. And I remember he was like, Siobhan, I brought in African music and we're going to rehearse in my trailer. And I was like, what? What? But who am I? I'm the guest. So I was like, okay. So, you roll with it. But I was married then. So see, I wasn't married when it first started, and then I got married. And they wanted my husband, who was a Wall Street trader, New Yorker,
Mhm.
to be at the card table with the other guys. And he was like, absolutely not. To this day, he's like, why didn't I do that?
Oh, I know.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine? I know.
Oh,
He's like, I'm not an actor. I'm not. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. So that was really, really unbelievably lucky um and really inspiring because to see how hard they worked, you know.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I'm a huge uh Seinfeld show fan, the entire cast, and a Larry David fan. I mean,
Oh
Herb is
yeah.
just he's just gets it out of the park. I mean, it's just so splendid. So you had a great experience with Seinfeld, super fun, and then from Seinfeld, then you were on SNL. Is that correct?
So I did one Seinfeld, then I did SNL.
Right.
Yes, and then I did the other ones when I wasn't working, you know, on SNL.
Okay. SNL. Um, how did that go about? Did you have a good experience with SNL? Because I want to get into something after these couple of questions that I admire about your principles. But did you have an overall good experience with SNL? Because
I
you,
did. I
I
mean,
think you had a
I
great cast in that those
yes. Oh,
seasons.
the
Yeah,
cast was like
yeah.
top shelf. So,
Mhm.
um, I was doing the one woman show. SNL came to that, and they said we're going to replace Nora Dunn and Jan Hooks, and we're flying all these women in. So, like 10 of us flew to New York. And talk about nerve wracking. I was like, what is this? So I basically did like 3 minutes of all different characters I had, and that night we all went. And the cast was in the audience, so we went, and I remember Chris Rock was like, I think it's gonna be you. And I was like, what? And Rob Schneider and Chris Farley, they were so great. You know, they were like, I think that, you know, anyway, and it's a very nocturnal show, of course. And I think I got the call really early in the morning. It was like 8 because I called my father who
Mm.
was golfing in Cazenovia. And they're like, oh, your dad's out on I think he's on the 17th hole, Siobhan, if you want to wait. And I was like, no, you got to get him. It's an emergency. So they get him, they bring him in, and he's on the phone. He's like, I go, Dad, I got on Saturday Night Live. And he goes, guys, strong on Saturday Night Live. Well, what did he say? He said, out of sight, Shivani, out of sight. Well, I got to go back and play golf. I love you. And he hung up. And I was like, oh, well, okay. Anyway, so yeah. So it was, I mean, it is cutthroat. It is
Oh, sure.
rough. But I had a good time. But it's like the Marines for comedy.
Yeah, and they have, people are not familiar, they can look into it more. Their structure on SNL is
Oh,
unbelievable. What they do, practice wise, that Monday through Saturday, the long hours overnight, the rehearsals, the run through the early show on Saturdays, then it's all live. I mean, it is a machine that you've got to
right.
be on your toes all the time. And then you used to mention something earlier, everyone, thinks that stuff is easy. No, these are fun but very rigorous, tough shows.
Right. And
Obviously, and it's
literally you could be a hero one week and then the next week you're like, huh?
oh
So,
yeah,
you know, and also like they pick double the amount of sketches that they end up doing. So till Friday night at 11 p.m. when there's notes before the show starts at 11:30, you could be in 10 sketches and end up in one.
yeah.
When they cut sketches. So
Mhm.
it is not for the week of heart.
No, 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 no. You've got to be strong and build up that callous and that resilience. That
Yeah.
look, you might your ego might get bruised, but it's not all about you. And I think once you let that go in an ensemble, it can come back
Yes.
tenfold in a great way. Yeah, and you know what? Something that you mentioned, and you said they were replacing Nora Dunn and Jan Hooks. Man, two great
Oh yeah.
ladies of comedy that were just
Yes.
so great, and Jan Hooks, just I'd love those two, especially when they did. Remember the singers? These
Oh yeah,
were
they were
those.
hilarious.
I forget their names they went by, but those were great. So there was something though uh with SNL, and I think it was perhaps other projects as well. Being both of us being Catholic and being mindful of sticking to our principles. And I do admire that about you because I've read about that and learned about that too over the past few weeks. There are certain roles that you have said, look, I'm not really comfortable uh, doing doing this because of my beliefs. Number one, is that true? Number two, which I believe it is because what I've read and heard. And are there any, is there anything that you can share about which roles they weren't, or any particular topic that you're like, you know what, it's just not funny and it's too low hanging fruit, and I want to be more highbrow in this above the bell.
Basically, and I tell young kids this all the time. You know, there's an order that you can live your life. And my faith and my family and who I wanted to be as a person, as a role model to my kid. I didn't have kids then, but was, first and foremost for me. Whether I really realized that at the time, I mean, I was pretty young, but I was like 3 weeks into the show, and there was something that I was like, this is so gross, and this isn't going to get on, but I think God has a really good sense of humor. And I, of course, get a call that night, and they're like, hey, we want you to be in the Italian restaurant sketch. And I was like, oh, I am not. I mean, it was not even, I didn't have to think about it. I was like, oh, no, I'm not your girl for that one. And it was like filth,
Yeah.
and it would never happen now. I mean, like, this women, it just wouldn't happen. It's just filthy. And so I then, like dating, get a call back. Are you sure? Because I was like, I'm telling you, I go, have you ever met my father? I'm number one, I don't want to be murdered by my father. And number two, I have to look at myself in the mirror, and I really didn't think much of it. I was like, absolutely not. And I think that a big, I remember Mazda pulled their money out, and I was like, well, I guess I'm not the only one. So, but I always stuck to my guns as far as that goes. And the same with, like, I had a part on a TV show, and once again, it was I love doing movies, because movies, you know exactly what you're getting, start to finish. This is the role. A role on a TV show could change, and they're like, okay, so now we decided that your role, you're going to be a streetwalker. So, okay, I'm on the show, and literally they're like, you're going to now start having an affair, and you met the guy at mass. I'm like, what? I am Catholic. What is happening? So I'm like, that is not happening. And so I had to, like, ask I was in upstate. It was summertime, and I had to drive down, and I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be good. So I get there, and I was like, I need to speak to the producer. That's like, the senior in high school calling the principal into their office, and I
Yeah,
was like,
right.
hi, so here's the deal. I'm not doing that. And I don't think this is going to work for me anymore. And I'm out. And I then had to go to set, because I had to finish the episode like it was out of order. You know what I mean? Like, I had to finish the past episode. And the makeup artists were like, female, and they're like, we're so glad you did this. Good for you. And I was like, oh boy. And so honestly, I got to set, and it was kind of like the kid that was like a rat or something from a party over the weekend. The analogy is terrible that I'm giving, but basically there were a lot of people that were not too happy with me. And I was like, whoa, this is rough. Like, not a lot of people are really liking me right now, except for maybe the makeup artist that whispered in my ear, which then started to strike me funny. For some reason, I think it was like the Holy Spirit. I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. People are really mad. Oh boy, and I was like, the only thing I could do was, it was either like, okay, you're either going to sink and be like, I'm such a loser, everybody hates me, or I'm going to rise above and I'm going to laugh about this, because you can't make this up.
Right.
And so I actually had to do a crying scene that day, and I was like, am I going to be able to cry? And then laugh, and everything worked out great. And, I'm just glad, because I feel honestly too, when you make those kind of decisions, then I thought, oh my gosh, maybe I'll never work again. Maybe I'll never work again. And I remember driving home back upstate, and I was like, oh, this is bad. It could really get around that I'm like a goody two shoes, which I'm not. But when it comes to certain things, I'm like, I'm out. So I got a call from my agent. She's like, oh, the Farrelly brothers are doing this movie. They want you to be in it. And I was like, what? And I felt like it was like a little God wink, to be courageous. And I think it's important, like, kids now, you don't want to think, well, if I don't do this, it's all over. You can be who you are and stick to your guns, and you're still going to work. And you will be rewarded for being tough too.
Yeah, exactly. I try to espouse that all the time, Siobhan, is resilience. That needs to come into play with all walks of life. You are going to be let down in life. And once you accept that and digest it, you will become more resilient, and you become less anxious about life. I truly feel that way. You'll find this inner peace.
Yeah, I was just out in New York, and I saw Nick there. They did this Eucharistic procession at St. Pat's, and Monsignor Shea, who's this great Monsignor, who I'm actually going out to to North Dakota to speak at their university, and I'm going to Notre Dame, believe it or not, which I'm like, I can't believe I'm going to Notre Dame. My SAT scores wouldn't even get me into the state. But I'm
I
showing
didn't get past
Shelter.
my signature score, so
Oh, it's ridiculous.
yeah,
Shelter in Solitude, the movie that I did last year, they're
yeah,
showing it out there. But anyway, why am I telling that? Oh, that he spoke and he said, you know, the low times and the rough times are when start to evolve more and as a person, and it's in the and you put your priorities in order. I mean, if your priority, or if my priority was really be famous, really please who's ever my boss, then a lot of times I wouldn't be able to look in the mirror. You have to be able to look in the mirror.
yeah. You certainly do, and I know that it's a big thing. I mean, a lot of people just, in any business, but especially in entertainment, they will just sell their soul,
Right.
um, in some capacity, and it's it just kind of takes away from the authenticity, um, of the person and the work. Because I
Yes.
feel like you're just trying to like cover up something, and it's I think we've all been that in some parts of aspects of our life, and when you really find that, look, this is who I am, I accept this,
Yeah.
that I'm authentic. Everything else just seems to fall into place. So I
Yes.
really I admire that quality about you immensely. And you had mentioned there's a couple last things that and I'm so thankful for your time that I just want to touch on, and I'll let you back to your busy, fun life. Is you mentioned I want to get to Shelter and Solitude.
Yes.
So I wanted to give the audience a little bit background. Well, first of all, before that movie, so I just want to say though, because I was talking to one of my friends, actually Bobby, who has Next Evolution Media, who does all my editing for the show here. We were talking just yesterday, and he goes, she's one of my favorite like actors. He's like, I loved her in Men in Black, and he
So
goes, just what she did. I think it was Dorothy, the bus. I just want to talk about Forrest Gump really quick. Like you, I'll tell you though, that there's a part, and we were talking about this yesterday. There's a part when you are seemingly like a bus driver that we all had like growing up,
yeah.
like just vexed, just maybe aggravated where they are in life, but still nice enough to be understand that these are children, and you can see your character's like, ugh, I don't, what are you doing? Like, I don't care about you. And then there's this great moment because the whole movie is made up these, in my opinion, the movie's made up of these moments to where it's like this strife or misunderstanding, and it all evens out with a smile. And you do this great smile, like, well, we're not strangers anymore. And then you blow a bubble with your gum. And it's like so perfect because think about it. If you really do dissect that part, and I really I look at that movie, there's so many instances within that movie that are like that because it's good and it's bad. It's tough times and it's a little bit easier times. And I just think within that role, so I just wanted to touch on that for the audience because did you have it must have been a great experience. I mean, you're
It was awesome.
one
It
of the
was,
most iconic movies
well, first of all, what
in the
happened was
canon.
I my very first movie was the movie Greedy. And I became really good friends with Mary Ellen Trainor, who's married to Bob Zemeckis, who directed Forrest Gump.
Mhm.
Now, I knew nothing. I never knew anything. And she's like, one day when we were on the set of Greedy, she's like, I can't be here tomorrow because they're opening the Back to the Future ride at Universal. And I'm like, what's Back to the Future? I'd never even seen it. I was like completely
Oh,
like ridiculous. So I auditioned not for the part of the bus driver. I auditioned for like a tiny part of the babysitter. And I tell young people this too. So I went in and I said, look, I got to be honest with you. I rode the bus my whole life. I'm really better for the bus driver. And they're like, huh? So he's like, well, I didn't picture that, but okay. So anyway, it's interesting that you're saying all that about, basically Dorothy Harris being kind and being grouchy. Growing up, I had this bus driver named Betsy Benfelt, and she had red hair that she wore like in a beehive. And my sister Mary, my oldest sister, was kind of out of it and kind of not meaning to be, but kind of wild. And there used to be a commercial for Percolator coffee, and she would go, and And Betsy Benfeld would take her mirror and she'd go, "Who is doing that?" And my sister would go, "Boop, boop." So at the dinner table, I told on my sister. And my father said, "What? You're making it hard on that woman. She has to drive." And she said, "Siobhan, you're in trouble for telling. And Mary, you're in trouble for doing it. Both of you go write sorry notes right now. And we're going up to Betsy's house." And I was like, "Sorry note? What am I going to write for?" And he's like, "Shut up, write it." So I was like, "Dear Betsy, I'm sorry that my sister's a jerk." Anyway, we get up there and my sister will not get out of the car. She's really shy. And she's like, "I'm not going up." So I had to deliver the sorry notes. So anyway, I it sounds crazy, but I was kind of entrenched in the bus world from upstate New York.
Mhm.
Um, I had a fabulous time on that, and it was really just a miraculous show. They never thought that it was going to be the big hit that it was, which is why Tom Hanks took points, which is why people took points. They're like, "We're putting a lot into this." And Mary Ellen, my friend, her dad had an injury. It was Bob Zemeckis' wife, and she really encouraged him to do it. So there's so much to that was just unbelievable. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that because it's a really iconic movie, and there's this innocence to it, to where I think that goodness out of that movie. I mean, obviously, there's other movies that make you feel that way, but that movie in particular it shows so many different aspects of struggle in life, but as we mentioned before, resilience. There's a resilience within that, and it's within it's very human. It drives to the core of the soul, and I think that that's a type of movie that will always appease every generation,
Oh yeah.
and always just knock it out of the park, just with everything that was written and on all the actors in it. So I for one am glad that you have a piece of that history. So
Which this is what I feel like is missing a lot now
yeah.
is a great story, which to bring it around to my movie Shelter and Solitude,
Yeah, yeah.
and goes again back to upstate New York, which is that my dad was an attorney and he would talk about his clients at the dinner table all the time. And every Sunday we'd go to Pompey, New York, and pass the prison, the Jamesville Penitentiary. And I was
Okay.
obsessed with prisoners and prison guards as a kid because he would talk about that. And after I did the movie Rushed about the fraternity hazing, then I wrote Shelter and Solitude with Robert Patrick. The same in Rushed, he played my husband. In Shelter and Solitude, he played my brother. And it's about three broken people. This unbelievable actor, Peter Macon. My son Peter actually is in it as well, playing a cop. But there was three broken people who basically, and goes back a little bit like to the Dorothy Harris type of type of character, who are broken, but they're really very good people. And they're not
Mm.
shiny and they're not glamorous and they're not what society thinks of as um attractive. My character in Shelter and Solitude, I play a broken country singer who sang in Nashville once. And I have posters of myself all over my bar from 1996. And when COVID hits, I end up working at the prison. And Robert Patrick's character, he set out, he's the prison warden, and he sets out to be a family man, and his wife has dumped him. So it's all these people with seen hard times, but in the end, they're have one goal of making this guy on death row have a great last 10 days of his life. And it basically comes down to the basics of human kindness and what's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, no, very true. And I appreciate you sharing that because that's the essence of, that's basically what we're all searching for.
Oh yeah.
Really is that everything can go away, and you have that moment of very human moment of grace. Um, there's acceptance with that. There's forgiveness. It's all wrapped into one
Yeah.
inner strife and turmoil.
And
And
you, I'm sure, like had such a lesson as a young boy with your mom
yeah,
dying. You realize when the end of your life comes, it's not about like what movie you're in or how many followers you had. It's
right.
about your family and your faith, and that's it.
Yeah, it's very true. That's how we grew up that way. And
Yeah,
the thing I've had discussions with this in keynote talks about, and I'll ask people, if did you have a parent, anyone have a parent that passed away when you were a child? And what happens is it can go different ways. I mean, our father stood right by us. I mean, he never drank, smoked, hit us, yelled, nothing. He's
that's
just
amazing.
very, very balanced. And it could have went anywhere. We
Oh,
could have
sure.
got split up.
Talk
Who
about
knows?
pressure.
But you grow up so fast
Oh, yeah. I'm
because
sure.
we were oh it this is why, like, when I was growing up, you have to do, chores. We had school and work every single day, or excuse me, school and chores, school during the week, and then a chore every day, and then through Saturday. Sundays were our day off. That was church or our grandmother's house,
Awesome.
for lunch and
Awesome.
dinner. And yeah,
Well,
but it's
so
the resilience. It's to your point of, I don't. I'm people who know me. I'm more of a minimalist. I save my money for, obviously, for the future, and travel for experience and to put into projects that I want. But honestly, I am not that two-car summer home boat guy. If those
no,
things come, sure, I'd love to share them with people. But it's just not what it's just not all that important to me.
right. This new play that I wrote, it's called Mother's Farewell.
Mother Cheryl,
And it's
yeah.
about my sisters, my three sisters from upstate, my niece and my aunt, and how we took care of my mother on her last day. Now, so we're in I'm hoping to get it off Broadway next September.
Yeah.
And Patty Heaton from Everybody Loves Raymond is going to
Oh
play my
yeah.
sister Mary. And ironically, when we did Shelter in Solitude, we premiered it out in Nashville because it's a country western story. And Patty had moved to Nashville, and I had met Patty years and years ago before Everybody Loves Raymond's success, and I thought she was a fabulous actress. And we both studied the same method, the Meisner technique. Anyway, she came, and we hit it off again. And I said, Patty, this is really weird because I wrote a play, and I've always thought you'd be perfect to play my sister Mary. Well, long and the short of it is we do a reading in New York, trying to raise money, and she's going to play my sister Mary in it. But she lost her mom
Mm.
very young. I believe she was 12. And she said,
Mm.
it's like, and it was a sudden, it was an aneurysm. And
Mm.
she's like, your life is perfect one week, and the next Monday you're going to school, and your entire world has been rocked.
Yeah.
And and she's an unbelievable person. She is so charitable and does so many things for other people. But basically going back to that, and this is what I'm hoping that this play will do, is because it's a comedy, but it's also shows, like, when the family comes together, all the decisions might not all be right. And there's a lot of rosaries, a lot of wine, and a lot of fighting. But in the end, we all have the goal of loving our mother, making sure they have a peaceful death, making sure she understands she did a great job, making sure that she knows that she's going to a great place. And that's what it all really comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree with that. And thanks for sharing that, by the way, because, also I feel, to that point, it's also a blessing. Sometimes you don't get those times and moments, like with Tricia, her instance with her mother just having an aneurysm. But sometimes it's a very grace-filled moment or moments to where you can actually sit down with a parent or a sibling and spend that time with them. It's a
Oh, yeah.
very powerful, um,
Yes.
and godlike moment. So thanks for sharing that. So looking forward to that. So that's the new play, Mother's Farewell. So where can people find out about, like, Mother's Farewell and Shelter in Solitude, all in your social media
So
handles,
Shelter
or
in Solitude on my Instagram, my son set that all up for me. I'm a disaster at social media, but Siobhan Fallon Hogan, at Siobhan Fallon
Mhm,
Hogan. So Shelter in Solitude is playing. The easiest way to watch it is on Amazon. Same with
mhm.
Rushed. And if people watch it and they like it, it's always great when people leave reviews. They both have, like, Shelter in Solitude has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think Rush has like 90. But
Great.
and Mother's Farewell, we are in the process. If you know any high rollers, we're still raising money. We have the theater doing an in-kind investment, but we're raising more money to do the play right. Because this day and age, you need a lot of money for marketing, and we have 9 actors. So if all goes well, God willing, it'll be next September off Broadway.
Oh, that's great. Fantastic. Well, we'll help spread the word here, and and throw our support till that comes to fruition, and we'd love to come down. I know that, and see that.
Yeah.
So That's fantastic. So, and I'll put all those that your social media handles, in the description, when I launch this. So, one last thing before I let you go, is I'm very excited for you because you'd mentioned this a few weeks ago, and EWTN, if
Oh,
people don't know, is Eternal Word Television Network. It was started, it's got to be 40 years ago, and it's a great. You can find the apps. They have a YouTube channel. That's on Sirius XM. That's where I listen to it. And this is Catholic programming around the clock, and different types of approaches being, the canon law of Catholicism. They take callers. There's psychologists, really good perspectives on a good, wholesome life, and trying to get there. And also, I think a lot of people within Catholicism or don't know religion or anything of that nature, they always feel intimidated. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't grow up that way. It was very open and loving. And like, all I can tell you is everyone's welcome. Like
oh yeah.
it's like you come in and just be, because a lot of people get intimidated. I don't know this. I don't know. So no one does. The good Lord was like forgiving in that. Like, I don't expect you to know everything, but if you show up just like as you do in life, good things will come of it. So I'm very excited because you announced that they are offering you a show which will commence in 2025. Could you tell our audience a little bit about that? Because I'm really excited for you.
We're in development right now, and we're supposed to start filming in March. So, it'll be a podcast, and basically they came and saw the reading of my play that I was telling you about, Mother's Farewell,
Mhm.
and they really liked it. And so they then said, "We'd like to bring you out to Napa because they do this conference, a big conference at the Napa Institute every July." And that's where I met the Bernardo brothers, and that's how I met you. So it's
Yeah.
crazy how things happen. And that's how I'm ending up speaking at Notre Dame and University of Mary and Fordham I spoke at. So, and showing Shelter and Solitude. So it just goes to show you how, you hang around with good people and good things happen.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's a great point and great way to leave it. And very excited for you. I think great things are going to come for it. You're going to be very natural at that. I think, we had talked briefly a few weeks ago that you'll be able to take phone calls and then bring those people into your lives and listen to them and speak. That's going to be a fun ride. That's
Yeah,
right
it'll
up
be
your
awesome. I
alley.
can't wait.
Oh, it's going to be great. Good for you. Well, I'm really excited for you. And I wanted to thank you, and I know our audience is very thankful for your time coming on, sharing your insights, your
Yes.
humor, your good nature, your good morals,
Thank you.
and yeah, and I
And
wish you continued success with everything that you have going on, and I know that we all here will definitely be watching and supporting you
well, I
from afar
really,
and up
really
close.
appreciate it. And I hope people will watch Shelter and Solitude on Amazon and rush it and support those films. Because I think the more people support films like that, the more films like that will be able to be made. You know,
Yes, no, I agree. Yeah,
because investors care about return.
I know exactly. It's all 9 out of 10
Unfortunately.
questions is answered with
Yes, but
money.
Greg,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It was great talking to you. I appreciate
You're
you having me
welcome.
on.
You're so welcome. So, again, our guest today was the lovely and very talented actress, comedian, Siobhan Fallon Hogan. So, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to all your future projects. Wish you
Thanks.
the best of luck, and we'll see you soon.
All
As
righty.
for me, thanks so much, everybody, for hanging on and watching another episode. We will be back very soon with another episode. Until then, you can visit that'smytimeshow.com for past episodes and future news. Everyone, be well, stay well, and stay cool, and we'll see you soon.